Hi, readers. We are ready today for another group of chapters in the one and only Ivan. This is our last lesson for the week, right? It is Tuesday, October 13th. But remember, Wednesday, there's no new reading work. So just catching up on tasks, right? You might have a Wednesday check in with your homeroom teacher, make sure all your work is in, and then you get a 4-day weekend. So let's get through this, enjoy our group of chapters for today, and then give yourself a little break and enjoy that extra time. So today we are reading chapters 73 through 86, which is pages 161 to 187. Remember that information is always in the top of your packet, and that can help you kind of keep track since the chapters are not numbered. So I'm on page 161, and I have my glasses back. Yesterday I could not find them, and you might have noticed in my reading I was having a little more trouble seeing what I was reading. So I'm back on track today. A bad dream. Not finding my glasses yesterday was like a bad dream. All right, a bad dream, page 161. I lie awake, peeling dried red paint off my fingertips. Bob, who accidentally walked on one of my paintings, is licking his red paws. Oops. Every so often, I glance over at the empty ring. The claw stick glints in the moonlight. Stop! No! Ruby's frantic cries startle me. So, scholars, when you're frantic, you're feeling panicked, right? Scared. Ruby, I call, you're having a bad dream. You're okay. You're safe. Where's Stella? She asks, gulping air. Before I can answer, she says, Never mind. I remember now. Go back to sleep, Ruby, I say. You've had a hard day. I can't go back to sleep, she says. I'm afraid I'll have the same dream. There was a sharp stick, and it hurt. I look at Bob, and he looks back at me. Oh, Ruby says. Oh, Mac. So she's remembering what happened. She puts her trunk between the bars. Do you think... She hesitates. Right? Remember, when you hesitate, you pause. You kind of stop to think for a moment, right? Hesitating. Do you think Mac is mad because I hurt him today? I consider lying, but gorillas are terrible liars. Probably, I finally say. He ran away after that, Ruby says. Bob gives a scornful laugh. Crawled away is more like it. We are quiet for a while. Branches claw at the roof. A light. Oh, there, scholars. Personification, right? Branches can't really claw, right? But the way they're sitting, right? It probably sounds like that. Like if they're moving in the wind, right? Scraping. So, personification. Branches claw at the roof. A light rain drums. One of the parrots murmurs something in her sleep. Ruby breaks the silence. Ivan, I smell something funny. He can't help it, Bob says, meaning it's Ivan who smells funny. I believe she's referring to the finger paints Julia gave me, I say. What are finger paints? Ruby asks. Well, you make pictures with them, I explain. Could you make a picture of me? Maybe someday. I remember Julia's picture, the one that will be worth $1,000,000. I hold it up to the glass. Look, it's you. Julia made it. It's hard to see, Ruby says. There's not much moonlight. Why do I have two trunks? I examine the picture. Those are feet. Why do I have 2 feet? That's called artistic license, Bob says. So he's just saying, right, artists can do what they want. Ruby sighs. Could you tell me another story? She asks. I don't think I can ever go back to sleep. I told you all I remember, I say with a helpless shrug. Then tell me a new story, she says. Make something up. I try to think, but my thoughts keep returning to Mac and his claw stick. Anything yet? Ruby asks. I'm working on it. Ivan, Ruby presses. Bob said you were going to save me. I search for true words. I'm working on that, too. Ivan? Ruby says in a voice so low I can barely hear her. I have another question. I can tell from the sound of her voice that this will be a question I don't want to answer. Ruby taps her trunk against the rusty iron bars of her door. Do you think, she asks, that I'll die in this domain someday? Like Aunt Stella? Once again, I consider lying, but when I look at Ruby, the half-formed words die in my throat. Not if I can help it, I say, instead. I feel something tighten in my chest, something dark and hot. And it's not a domain, I add. I pause, and then I say it. It's a cage. Now, scholars, before I turn the page, I want you to think for a minute about how important that is. If we look back to the beginning of our book, right, remember, he kept thinking of it as a domain, right, his territory, his domain, and Stella would say, it's a cage, right? Now he's starting to see that same way, right? Now he's saying, oh, it's not a domain. It is just a cage. 166. The story. I look at the ring, layered with fresh sawdust. I look at the skylight and the half-hidden moon. I just thought of a story, I say. Is it a made-up story or a true one? Ruby asks. True, I say. I hope. Ruby leans against the bars. Her eyes hold the pale moon in them. Right? Can your eyes actually hold something? No, so that's again personification. The way a still pond holds stars. Once upon a time, I say, there was a baby elephant. She was smart and brave, and she needed to go to a place called a zoo. What's a zoo? Ruby asks. A zoo, Ruby, is a place where humans make amends. So everyone remember what make amends means, right? When you make amends, you try to make something right? You try to correct an error, right? It's kind of like a way of apologizing. You try to fix something. A good zoo is a place where humans care for animals and keep them safe. Did the baby elephant get to the zoo? Ruby asks softly. I don't answer right away. Yes, I say at last. How did she get there? Ruby asks. She had a friend, I say. A friend who made a promise. Scholars, are you thinking of any baby elephants who have a friend who made a promise in this book? Interesting. How? Page 168. It takes a long time, but finally Ruby returns to sleep. Ivan, Bob whispers, yawning. What you said about the zoo. How are you going to do it? Suddenly, I feel as if I could sleep for 1,000 days. I don't know, I admit. You'll think of something, Bob says confidently, his voice trailing off as his eyes close. What if I don't? I ask, but Bob is already asleep. His little red feet dance, and I know he's running in his dreams. Remembering. Bob and Ruby sleep on. I don't sleep. I think about the promise I made to Stella, and the pictures I've made for Ruby, and I remember. I remember it all. What they did. We were clinging to our mother, my sister and I, when the humans killed her. They shot my father next. Then they chopped off their hands, their feet, their heads. Something else to buy. There is a cluttered, musty store near my cage. They sell an ashtray there. It is made from the hand of a gorilla. So scholars, back when this story took place, right, gorillas were hunted, right, for their hands and their feet, because right, they had big hands. So as he's saying, the store sells these trays that are gorilla's hands, but the way they're shaped, right, then it's like a little dish, a little tray that you could set things in. And people would want to buy that. I know it sounds strange. I think we've learned from that, hopefully, for today. It's the world. Page 172. Another Ivan. So scholars, this part's really important because there's a question related to another Ivan. But you have to be careful because there's not actually another Ivan. So think about that as we're reading. When morning comes and the parking lot glimmers with dew, I see the billboard on the highway. There I am, the one and only Ivan, bathed in the pink light of dawn. I look so angry, with my furrowed brow and clenched fists. I look the way my father did, the day the men came. I am, I suppose, a peaceful sort. Mostly, I watch the world go by and think about naps and bananas and yogurt raisins. But inside me, hidden, is another Ivan. He could tear a grown man's limbs off his body. Right? So this other Ivan's inside him, right? This feeling he has, right? This Ivan who would act very differently than the Ivan who we've learned about and know from this book. In the flicker of time it takes a snake's tongue to taste the air, he could taste revenge. So that fast, right? He could really hurt someone. He is the Ivan on the billboard. I stare at the one and only Ivan, at the faded picture of Stella, and I remember George and Mac on their ladders, adding the picture of Ruby to bring new visitors to the Exit 8 Big Top Mall and Video Arcade. I remember the story Ruby told, the one where the villagers came to her rescue. I hear Stella's kind, wise voice. Humans can surprise you sometimes. Do you remember Stella saying that? Humans can surprise you sometimes. Meaning sometimes they do things you weren't expecting, right? They surprise you and do something helpful, something kind. I look at my fingers, coated in red paint the color of blood, and I know how to keep my promise. So he's just thought of how he can help Ruby. Days. During the days, I wait. During the nights, I paint. I worry when Mac takes Ruby into the ring. He carries the claw stick with him all the time now. He doesn't use it. He doesn't have to. Ruby isn't fighting back anymore. She does whatever Mac asks. So we just learned that he's painting at night. It's part of his plan. So keep watching and listening and reading for these details. Nights. I close my eyes. I dip my fingers into the paint. When I'm done with one piece of paper, I set it aside to dry. It's so small, just one sheet, and I'm going to need so many. I move on to the next, and the next, and the next. It's a giant puzzle, and I'm making the pieces one by one. By morning, my floor is covered with paintings. I hide the paintings under my pool of dirty water before Mac can see them. I don't want them to end up in the gift store, selling for $20 a piece. $25 with a frame. These paintings are for Ruby. Every one of them. Project. Ivan, Ruby asks one morning when I am trying to nap, why are you always so sleepy during the day? I've been working on a project at night, I tell her. What's a project? It's a thing. A painting. It's a painting for you, actually, I answer. Ruby looks pleased. Can I see it? Not yet. Ruby pokes with annoyance at her roped foot. She takes a breath. Ivan, do I have to do the shows with Mac today? I'm afraid so. I'm sorry, Ruby. Ruby dips her trunk in her water bucket. That's okay, she says. I already knew the answer. So scholars, you have a little bit of reading now to do on your own. Pages 178 to 187. So 178 to 187. And keep in mind as you're reading, right, he's thought of something to help Ruby, and it involves painting. See if you can find out any more clues related to that in today's reading. And then remember, scholars, there's a video of our packet work where I'll help you out and we'll work on a few of those little parts together in the video. And then Wednesday, use to catch up on any work if you're missing anything. Check in with your teacher if it's your check-in Wednesday, and just relax, right? Enjoy your long weekend.